one of the things I'll be talking about is engagement in the online space. And you will see from my presentation that I actually set as a default cameras on. However, you can opt out without saying a word. You can opt out. You don't need to have your cameras on if you do not want to, for whatever reason. It might be that, you don't like my Trini accent. You don't want to, I don't know what it is. You don't have to have an excuse. You don't have to put it on. But the default, I would desire all of you, if possible, to turn on if you have the bandwidth or if you have the ability to. We appreciate you. Again, no need to opt out. Just don't put it on if you wish. And also, if you do have a photo, that'd be great to see who you are. I'd love to see Gordon's face or June's face, even if it's a photo. I'd love to have that. So I talk to you and not the black screens that we're seeing here. All right. Thank you so much, all of you. If you could, again, just load up a photo in your profile so we'll see who you are. Oh my gosh, beautiful. So let me share my screen. And I will tell you this. Okay, here we go. Okay, and I'm trying to get rid of, I'm a co-host, so I'm seeing all of the people waiting in the waiting room coming across my screen, so they're blocking my vision, actually, my view. Okay, so let's talk about online teaching and learning. I'll start generally talking about my experiences at the Geese College of Business. I mispronounced it the first time I met our benefactor, Larry Geese, and called him Geis, but it's a Geese College of Business. And then I'll go in more specifically to talk about engagement. All right. So what happened in 2015? As you know, I worked at the Geese College of Business. I was the director of MBA programs, in addition to being a professor in my administrative role as director of MBA programs. Before that, I was academic director as faculty of all our MBA programs, executive MBA, professional MBA, residential MBA full-time. And I moved into the space as director. In 2015, while I was academic director at the time, one of my colleagues, Norma Scagnoli, Dr. Scagnoli, went to a conference in Atlanta hosted by Georgia Tech. And one of the persons I was talking about, they got several $1 million to boost to start an online program, online MBA. And she came back to you and said, you know what, we can do this. This is what we need. The writing was on the wall. At that point in time, we had seen decreasing enrollments in our program. We had moved from a size of incoming class of 200 students to, at that time, 100. And then by 2017, it went down to 50 students in each incoming class. If that's not telling you going over a cliff, pretty soon, I don't know what would. So with the help of our Senior Associate Dean of Innovation, who's now the president of Illinois Institute of Technology, Raja Chambadi, they moved forward with launching the iMBA program, our online MBA. I was involved in the first set of discussions, trying to get faculty on board and persuade them to join our movement forward. I remember clearly one meeting, and this goes back to what Sandra Maynard said. One meeting, we faced a lot of resistance from faculty, and this was in 2015. One faculty member, when we told him we are going to move forward with the online MBA, and eventually shut down our in-person MBA, he pulled out his wallet with flair, I have taught this way, and he pulled out a card from his wallet. I've taught this way for the last 32 years. and I'm never going to stop. It has worked for 32 years and worked for 32 more. So Raj looked at him calmly in the Clint Eastwood sort of way and said, you know why the teenage dinosaurs were mad at their parents? I said, why? He said, because they were telling them, look up, and the parents were trying to convince them it was a star in the sky. Look what happened to them. And he said, Nick, don't be a dinosaur. You'll be extinct pretty soon. Nick got up and left. And I think then he put in his papers for retirement. You know, bravo to him. So that's our first lesson. Was my first lesson, I would say. And I'll tell you all, don't be a dinosaur. Embrace change. Take risk. Even when you think what you have done for 30 years is the gospel. Even when you think that, please, you could be extinct pretty soon. So we actually move forward. And I will tell you that having been at the University of the West Indies, I actually attended the University of the West Indies in St. Augustine and in Mona. Big up to Irving Hall. And enjoyed my time in Jamaica. My uncle at the time was the vice principal of Calabar High School, and he moved on to be principal of St. Jago #1. So he moved on there. So I enjoyed my time there. But in both campuses, we had the same approach to education. We had the same thing. We had this big final exam of with 60, 70, sometimes 100% of your grade. And I went back to teach at UE. I teach in the online space. And we still are faced with some of the same things. They're doing it the same way. I am going to be 60 years old, and they're doing it the same way they were when I was 19 in some instances. We need to change. We need to change. We need to move forward. So anyway, don't be a dinosaur. Now, what happened since then? We closed our full-time program down, all our in-person programs, and we launched the IMBA. We now have a suite of courses of specializations. We have an IMBA, an IMSM, which is a one-year program, Master of Science in Management, $11,000, and enrollments are through the roof. We have an IMSA, which is a Master of Science in Accounting, which is one of the #1 ranked online programs in the USA. And how has growth been for us? Well, before I get into that, Norma realized that we needed a pedagogical approach that would be meaningful for faculty and deliver results. And she was familiar with the community of inquiry model, and Norma has a PhD in education and in education technology. And she introduced this community of inquiry model to the folks who were at the forefront at the Geese College of Business. And basically this model talks about student experience and student learning outcomes, and looks at 3 different aspects: social presence, cognitive presence, and teaching presence of building this community where students feel a part of a movement forward that involves scholarly inquiry and learning. So what is this model? I don't want this to be an academic talk. I don't want this to be all about models and frameworks. I want this to be about practical tools that you might be able to take away and say, how can I improve my online presence? Because I wouldn't tell you can improve your teaching, because a lot of you are excellent professors, excellent instructors in your own right. But what can you take away from this that might help you in terms of your online presence in the online space in the classroom? So getting back to this, so I'll go over this model very quickly. The first is cognitive presence. This aspect of the model talks about how to engage students in critical thinking, how to get them to work together, and some ways to do that through online discussions, using things like case studies, live sessions. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. Now, with regard to critical thinking and developing problem-solving skills, one of the things this model points to is getting students to work together. And you don't always have to be the one standing there giving instruction. You don't. You can get students to work together to help solve problems, put them in groups to work together. I have found, for instance, with case studies, I'm doing it with Harvard case studies. I'm starting to write my own case studies. And we have a case writing initiative that I'm leading at the Geese College. And these cases don't have to be long Harvard cases. It can be short cases, right? For instance, just in my class last year, we have there's an American student, an alum, who came to Jamaica. Of course, he went only to Mobay, doesn't know what Kingston looks like. Came to Mobay and he ate some Jamaican food. And he loved it. He came back up to Champaign and he opened the only Jamaican restaurant in that part of Illinois. American, eh? Oh, yeah. So that's a good business opportunity, you all. Keep in mind, okay, whoever is interested, we can talk afterwards. And he started a food truck and moved from the food truck to a restaurant, a sit-down restaurant. And now he's faced with a decision, should I put the food truck back out there that COVID is over and so on? Should I start with a food truck again? And that became a case study for my students that we can discuss in the distribution. When we discuss in distribution, one of the 4 P's place in class. So I wrote a brief case about Caribbean Grill, and students had to make the decision. The good thing about this is they can relate to that case. He's an alum from the University of Illinois. It's in Champaign. Even though it's an online class, we try to get students to connect to the campus and this town of Champaign, Illinois. And also, when we do the case, he can actually come in online and tell us the outcome and talk about it. So I really believe using case studies and so on helps with promoting critical thinking, but we have to try and make them more relevant, and that's what we do. In addition, we have students work on issues, or work on challenges within the breakout rooms that help further their own, whatever their final project is. I don't believe in final exams. I give them projects that have seen me run afoul of the UWI administration multiple times, because saying what percentage of final exam, you have to have this much percentage in your final exam must be worth this much. Like, golly, I hear you. But I don't believe in final exams. So I give them a project that they work on. And during the breakout sessions, they work on different aspects of the project. So one breakout session, remember, we asked them to develop a positioning statement for the business they were working on. Each student, each group has to develop a marketing plan for a specific business. So every time we meet, they have to work on some aspect of the project and advance it forward. So engaging them cognitively, encouraging critical thinking, but towards a specific goal really helps. Now, in addition to cognitive presence, there's also teaching presence. Now, Dr. Pilgrim is a wonderful person and a great instructor. How she would teach would be very different than how I teach, even though it's the exact same material. It's the exact same material, but we might have different approaches to teaching, all right? And that's what teaching presence is. How do you, as an instructor, present your material in order to help students engage in scholarly inquiry? How is a class designed? How many breakout rooms do you want? What other tools do you use to help you engage students? One of the things we do, and I'll show you an example, we do weekly updates, and these are usually recorded 1 minute, 2 minute video on your phone. Sometimes I go over longer because being West Indian, I tend to be wordy and I'm keeping track of my time, Dr. Pilgrim. But teaching presence is critical, and I'll show you some examples later on. The most important aspect, and the one that really helps with retention of students, is the social presence. What do you do to help build that community so that students feel that you're not just a person on the screen and they aren't a screenshot and so on, they're real people? What do you do? How do you infuse your personality into the session? What do you do into the class, right? How do you make the learners actually connect with you or with each other? I will show you an example of how I engage them that way. And this actually helps with their learning, right? They're part of a community, they're not doing it alone. We have professors here who, at these college, who use different techniques with their weekly updates. And I think weekly updates are critical. It's just, again, it's just 1 minute with your cell phone, 2 minutes, telling students what's coming up, what's expected of them, and then you post that. We have one professor who go to different art spots in Champaign. So the museum, might go by a sculpture, and that was his thing. And he'd tell them quickly, oh, I'm by this sculpture here that was done by this person. Wonderful, you must see it when you come to Champaign. And then he would go ahead and just tell them what's coming up. We have another professor who would do the updates from his home while he's walking his dog, Professor Gary Hecht. So they knew he was a dog person. Then we have another professor who would go to different football or soccer fields, they say, around Champaign and do it there. So they'd infuse their personality into these updates into the class. We'd also get students to that community by asking them to do things online as well. One of the things we have done is ask them to take a picture of where they're taking the class. So what their desk looks like. And then the professor gave an award for the messiest desk and the cleanest desk, right? That was wonderful. So students actually posted that, and some did it on Twitter. They had to @ the Geese College and @ the professor. Some of the folks might not know @ it simply means mentioning who the person is on Twitter. And then also they had to, one of the contests was students posting where they were taking the class from, and some of them would post by a pool, some of them would do show. One woman did it by a hockey rink. When I did that in my class, I actually had someone who did it from an aircraft carrier flying over Afghanistan, and it was interesting. Someone else did it an overnight flight to Japan. She was looking at a recording of my class, of the live session. So how do you generate that social presence? Now, in this model, the community of inquiry model, social presence is the most important component that's responsible for retention. We have the research done by Noel and a colleague shows that when they've developed a quantitative model looking at it, social presence is critical. And I'm telling you about some examples, but I'll show you what I have done as well, what we've done in our class. What are the results for us using this community of inquiry model? We have found that students have reported the self-reports of engagement are really high and high satisfaction. We have a 95% retention rate. So 95% of students who have started our program have actually completed the program, which is very, very high in the online space. We've actually had multiple other programs come in to see what we do, and we give them a lot of the, I guess we give them a lot of the gravy, but we don't give them everything. We can't give them the actual meat. That drumstick is ours, right? And then also we have students who volunteer for a lot. We have a high engagement from alumni, and this is really critical for us because they help bring other new students into the program. We have seen growth from 2017. We started in 2016 with 211 students enrolled. Right now we have 5,407 students, and that number has gone up. Sorry, this is 2021, 2022. We now have over 7,000 students in our program. 7,000, think of that, from 211 in the space of 7 years. have gone up to 7,000 students. And again, we retain 95% of them, and we see a high level of engagement using pedagogical approaches like the community of inquiry model. Now, let's talk specifically about engagement, and I am going to engage you in a minute. I want you, all of you if possible, complete this quick poll online. Go to Poll Everywhere, polev.com/egees432, and respond to this question in 1 or 2 words. Tell me a major challenge of teaching online. Again, I'm West Indian, and we have a lot of West Indians, so I know sometimes saying things in 1 or 2 words is tough for us, for me. But please, just 1 or 2 words. What's a major challenge of teaching online? So go ahead, I'll give you a couple minutes. And you can also text, by the way. I'm sorry, you can also text, but disclaimer, international text rates might apply. So.
Is it possible for you, please, to, if you can, post the link in the chat? It may be easier for us to simply click from there.
Okay, I will. Let me, where is the chat? There
yes, we'll do that for you, Hayden. You hold on.
Okay, great, great. By the way, I'm going to share the results. So watch what you post. What? No, I know we don't have to say that, but just make sure it's family friendly. And I see one of my colleagues who did his PhD in Champaign is going to be a speaker here tomorrow, Dr. Andrew Hunt, a math whiz and now a leader in education in the Caribbean. He's here with us today. Wonderful. So keep on typing. I am actually going to stop sharing for a minute and go to the results. Now, when you are done, could you raise your hand electronically for me? Electronically. Electronically. Just raise your hand electronically when you're done. I see one hand. Okay, I hope we have more than 2 people who did it. 2 words, Henry, 2 words. 2 words. Thank you, I like that, Henry. Henry says, absence of living humanity. And that's exactly it. That's what social presence is about, infusing your class with humanity. Infusing your class with humanity. I see a lot more people join. So let me see when I go get the results. I would love to see your faces as long as you can. Please turn on your cameras. If not, post the picture. I see beautiful pictures with beautiful smiles. There's Andrew, there's Veronica Reed Johnson, lovely photographs. Avanel, great. Those black screens, it's tough to watch. Okay, let me go to the responses. Right, hold on. I'm trying to find where I have it here, trust me. Oh, here we go. Wow, this is wonderful. We have a lot of responses. I'm going to share with you the responses. Here we go. Student engagement, participation, engaging, attention, the internet. This is wonderful. Can you see my screen, by the way?
Yes, yes, yeah.
Great, wonderful, wonderful. This board, true. The faculty, that sounds like an administrator and really great. You can lower your hands now, people. I appreciate you, appreciate you. Lack of attention, no connection. So So, wow, this is great, great. Let me stop sharing and then go back because I only have about, I think, 15 more minutes. And I have to be done and leave you. Okay. Great. Thank you for participating in that with Pool Everywhere. It's actually a very good investment. I must say it's one of the few tools that you can use and create word clouds, but it does so many other things. So some of the major challenges which I have come across in doing presentations such as these, or I've seen from my own experience, really one of them, especially in the Caribbean and in the US, student access. Some students don't have proper internet. Some students don't have the environment in which they might be able to participate. And that is something that must be addressed. The situation at home could be a challenge as well for some students. This is especially so high school and undergrad, a little less so for graduate students who might be more settled or in a position in their lives where they can participate. And finally, very importantly, as you've seen, engagement. Engagement is key. Now, I've written a couple of articles about engagement. One of them, it's a great, well, it's a piece you could look at, Harvard Business School publishing, their teaching, where they discuss teaching. Don't go and look at it now, but it's something you could take a look at as well. It sort of summarizes some of what I'm going to discuss today. So I have introduced, when we talk about engagement, I've developed or created this model called the 3 C's model. Now, the 3 C's model, it's you will see it and say, I know this. Yeah, I know it. This is true. I've just pulled together what most of you might already know. The first C is communication. Communication, we'll talk about this in detail in a minute. Next is connection. And finally, congratulations. And I'm going to draw a line between the community of inquiry model and my 3 C's model. There's a connection, pun intended. First with communication. Now, I start by asking students to put on their cameras for a number of reasons, right? I use it as a default, Research has shown that because of things like the status quo bias, when you establish a default, people are less likely to shift out of it simply because that's the standard. For example, organ donation in Germany is 15.5%. 15% of people actually donate their organs because they have an opt-in. You check a box when you're getting your driver's license and say, I want to opt in. In Austria, it's an opt-out system. The default is everyone is an organ donor, but when you're getting a license, all you do is check a box and you opt out. In the chat, could you type for me what do you think the percentage of organ donors are in Austria? What do you think the percentage of organ donors are? The percentage of the population. What is the percentage of the population of organ donors? All wrong, but Runis and Shakira are closer. Gordon is closer. It's 99.5%. 99.5%. No, 99.5%. Now, and they've seen it starting to trend downward a little bit because it was even higher as young people, have, I guess, the younger crowd, they really want more control of their bodies and so on. But the fact is, once you establish that as a default and tell students they could opt out whenever they want, no reason given, no excuses, they can opt out, we tend to find at least between 75 and 80% of students put on their cameras. Now, we do this by announcing at the very beginning of class, remember cameras on, that's a default, and we explain why cameras should be on. We explain why. We talk to them about the fact that people remember more. We are able to determine whether or not students understand what we're saying. Like I'm doing this presentation and I can see some faces and some people nodding. I know what you're getting it. You understand, but then there are others, I have no idea if you're getting or if even you're enthused by what I'm saying. So I can't self-correct. It's tough. So that's the other thing. Then the other thing about cameras on is that there's this thing called emotional contagion. What happens is that when people see someone else happy, even a happy photograph works. But when people see other people happy, that spreads. And we all know that the more positive someone is, the better they learn. So that is something that is really displayed when people have their cameras on. So this is I was engaged in a discussion with some of my high school friends. We were talking about sustainability after COVID. And again, when the audience saw this and the other participants in the Zoom call, that positive emotion spreads. Now, the downside to this, right? Negative emotions are also more salient. So you could have someone come on and they sour, as we say in Trinidad, sour, upset, can't, they find a problem for every solution and a rain cloud for every silver lining. That spreads as well. And that's actually much more salient. So that's a risk. Now, we have to remember, with regard to cameras, I must say this, you have to show empathy. If someone doesn't have their camera on, that's fine, let them be. But make sure at the beginning, you address this and tell them the reasons why, the entire class, all right? But there's students who are in situations who cannot turn their cameras on. One thing I'll tell you that LinkedIn did a survey, anonymous survey, asked people when they have their cameras off, what do they tend to do? And I put in the chat the percentage of people said they're doing something else. Type in the chat the percentage of people in the meetings who said they're doing something else. Anyone tell me what percent of people admitted on LinkedIn anonymously that they were doing something else when the cameras were off? Wrong. No, Andrew had said 100. No, Andrew, it's actually 85%. 85%. It's not 100. 85% admitted doing something else. And that could be something for a minute or two, right? But even, think of it. Try driving and sending a text at the same time. You miss what's on the road. So you're missing what's on the road here for that 2-3 minutes. I could have just said the person who answers this question gets $1 million. I didn't say that, but I could have. You missed out. So yeah, the other thing I do, I encourage questions. I ask them questions and make sure they ask me questions. You want to ensure, and I want to see questions in the chat as well, please. Just keep on being engaged. Now, let me just show you briefly what this is a promo for my live sessions. So you'll see how we communicate during the live sessions, all right? I have to stop sharing because if I send you there, and then I will say share with sound. Okay, can you see this?
Yes, we're seeing it.
And if you can hear it, Laura, when I turn it on, just give me a thumbs up. This is how I interact in my live sessions. If it comes on.
It is spinning, so hopefully it'll come.
I know, I saw that. Okay, I'm gonna just do this. Let me see if this comes on now. Hello, and welcome from wherever in the world you are. One thing you'll know by now, you'd realize you are not going to be able to just sit back. Got excited.
Absolutely.
I do not believe in exams. It will be a collaborative event, something you do over time with others. And that's what we do in this class. I want you to put up your hands and tell me 2 associations from the case.
Tradition comes to mind.
Associated with a working man.
Also inexpensive and very accessible.
End my classes by saying, all of you, go out in the world and be successful. All right. So, yeah. So let me try to get back to the presentation. Here it is. Can you see this? Yes. Can you? No?
Yes, yes.
You can see the slides. Okay, great. Great. So again, I engage students by asking them questions. They ask me questions, and ensure that we have open lines of communication at all times. And I always try to display positive energy. Someone said, that's your personality. Actually, no, it's not. I am actually fairly introverted for the most part. I am an ambivert. So you can train yourself to do this. It's not something that I was born with, right? So it's something that I've developed over time. You know, it's like a different persona that you have to have out there. In terms of communication, we also use breakout rooms. We use the breakout rooms for case discussions. We do role plays. I ask someone, if you're doing cases, okay, you take the role of the protagonist and you take the role of the buyer who's arguing with them, or the customer. We use the breakout rooms to solve problems and do in-class assignments, but also just help us build that community that we talked about. With the breakout rooms, I always provide them with rules. We want to ensure that students feel heard. So I tell them that they have to remember the breakout room number, but each person has to present an idea, each person. And they select the best idea, appoint a speaker from your group. Now, what I do, I would give them guidance, say, okay, appoint the person who lives the furthest away from Champaign, or appoint the person, I never say the oldest, I might say the youngest, or appoint the person who ate this last. So certain rules that might ensure that people are assigned randomly, because we all know in breakout rooms there's that one person who dominates and wants to talk. And others don't get the chance, or the people just shy and don't want to talk. But if they have the information, they're more likely to. All right. The other thing I do in terms of communication, where we talk about giving people a voice, I always ensure that I ask people who typically not ask in these types of situations, women from countries where their voices might not always be heard, and there are those countries that exist. I bring them in. I'm teaching in the US in the majority institutions, so I tend to ask women, students of color, other students who are not necessarily American, because the other students get their point in anyway, right? They get their point in. So I make sure I give them a voice. I remember a few years ago, there's this woman, her name was Namala. She was from Afghanistan, even though Namala is a Hindu name, but she was from Afghanistan, and she told me at the end, because I'd say, oh, you have a famous name, if you know the story about Namala. But anyway, at the end, she wrote me a very nice email and said, Professor, this is the first time I felt heard. It made me feel seen, made me feel heard, made me feel valued. And I was touched by it, simply by asking her questions every other week. You know, maybe we have 8 sessions. I spoke to her 4 times. That's it. I called out. But the first time, after the first time, I realized that she was very hesitant. So the next time, instead of cold calling, I warm called her. What's a warm call? I emailed her, Namala, hope you're doing well. I will be calling on you tomorrow to ask you what you think the problem is in this case. All right, so prepare for it, get ready. I know you'll do a wonderful job. Thank you for being such a great student. And she wrote me back, very brief email. I will be ready. Thank you, Professor. That's it. Make sure your students feel seen, heard and valued. Another way we communicate is through polls, use icebreakers. We ask people, we do knowledge checks. So I would ask, if this were a class, am I making sense? Do you get it? Are you hearing me? And ask specific people whether or not they understand what's going on. Laura, you following me, Laura? Are we on? All right, great.
I'm following.
Send me that reminder, Laura, about the time, please. Keep me on track. We also use the chat as well, but we have had instances where people have become sometimes misogynistic in chat, and we've had to ensure that we police the chat. So we assign a chat monitor to do it. All right, it's critical. And then we also, in the days of Zoom bombing, I was presenting at a conference in England about challenges faced by faculty of color and so on. And we had a Zoom bomber who was racist, and we didn't have a chat monitor. So that person posted a bunch of stuff in the chat until someone saw it, so and jumped on it. But appoint a chat monitor and someone who has the ability to kick people out of the Zoom room. And you see there's some of the chat that we've had. I'll go through that quickly. This was one case I discussed where I asked students about, it's a case about a beer manufacturer launching extension. I was asking about the associations of the brand, and they type it in the chat rather than asking individuals. Now, the thing is, when someone does this and people see one or two people doing this, they engage themselves as well. And even if you ask one person something, other people, you have a group, a large group of 100, 200 people. My live sessions are 300 people sometimes. If you get to 20 people and people see them being engaged and so on and happy and smiling, again, emotional contagion, that spreads. So ensure that you are able to communicate with students. Now, we can never mimic an in class. I mean, it's not, you can't do the exact same thing, right? We have lost a little bit of our humanity by doing this, to quote one of the attendees, but we can give students back some of their humanity by talking to them by name, calling them by name. You know, I also try to set time limits on comments, because some people will go on and on. And I also like to refer to comments students have posted in our class Q&A, etc., to help bring them in. Now, the other part, so that's communication, the other is connection, and this is directly linked to the community of inquiry model. Remember, we talked about social presence, where students feel they're part of community, and they're real people. There's so many ways to do this, but this helps drive that connection between students, and it leads to high engagement and better class performance, right? One of the things we do is we use what's known as a small, medium, and large model. We start discussions in very small groups, in breakout rooms, maybe 2 or 3, and then the next set of groups tend to be medium size. So we bring several groups together. We might split the class in half. So we'll have now 2 breakout rooms. And then finally, we bring the entire class together, and we have a larger session. Now, this enables people to have a voice at different levels, and people are more likely to talk and participate if it's just 3 or 4 people versus, 50. So that's why I start small, move medium, and then go to large. Now, in terms of connection, again, talking about having a social presence. One of the things we do, just an example of something we do, we give students a means of expressing themselves. We do a t-shirt night. So we wear a t-shirt from your country of origin. I did a t-shirt night in one of my UE classes in Moon, and I asked them to wear a t-shirt or something from their high school. It lets them express themselves. It lets them be more than that person on camera. And when they introduce themselves, they have to say, I am David from Kingston College, or Maria from St. Diego, you know, and so on. And it really creates a sense of community. This was, again, they'd wear something from their town or their city. Some people would wear it from their country, and it really helped. Now, when you talk about connection, and I have to start wrapping up. I'm almost there, Laura. One of the things we do is I make sure I connect with them and show them I'm real, not only in my weekly updates, but with the introduction. We do a brief introduction. I'll show you this brief introduction if you'll bear with me. And this helps set the stage for the, I have to share.
We can hear you, not see.
Welcome from wherever in the world you are. My name is Hayden.
Are you seeing?
I'm a professor at the Geese College of Business at the University of
Wait,
Illinois in Urbana-Champaign. I teach marketing, and
I'm trying to find it. Oh, here it is.
What I do. I was born in the wonderful Twin
It was showing. It stopped showing now. It started again.
That's the southernmost country in the Caribbean. We're actually very close to Venezuela. We're the birthplace of steel band, calypso, and limbo.
Yeah.
Before I completed my PhD at the University of Florida, I worked for several years in corporate
Remember,
America.
you want to be a real
My
person.
most memorable job was at an ad agency called Bozell Worldwide. You might have seen some of our work. We managed the Milk Mustache campaign. Remember that? Got milk? Some more about me. I'm a huge soccer fan. Where I'm from, we actually call it football. My favorite team is one of the best teams in the world. I know some of you will argue, but it's one of the best teams in the world, Arsenal. Go Gunners. I used to play soccer, but I'm getting a bit too old for that now. And that's me in a nutshell. You know, I really look forward to being your instructor over the coming months. In this course, we'll teach you about marketing strategy, emphasizing that.
Okay, so that basically was the introduction, and you can see I wasn't afraid to make fun of myself and so on, but it made me more real to students. Okay, now we also do a weekly update. I'm not going to show it to you. My weekly update, of course, I wear Arsenal gear and I do it by my house, so they see it. At the beginning of one weekly update, I actually showed them some of my favorite books in my office. Right, simple, showing them some of my favorite books. One of the students said, "Ooh, you're kind of militant, professor." I said, "No, I'm not a revolutionary." So anyway, Laura.
I'm just reminding you about time. Sorry.
Okay, right. This is the last one, actually, last slide.
Thank you.
Or second to last slide. So again, connection. Make sure students see you as a real person, right? Finally, congratulations. Students like to know that they have done a good job, regardless of their age. I've had students in their 50s and 60s, and you tell them, "Wow, I love that comment. Wonderful, really makes sense." And they appreciate it. They write to me and say they appreciate it. So I recognize them. I have a very small budget given to me by the university. I buy 3 T-shirts and I give them to my participation warrior. Now I say that's not the person who's most, but the person who made the most impact, right? So I don't want people jumping in all the time. In addition, you know, at the end of my presentations, I always say go out in the world and be successful. And I created these magnets, which cost me like $1.50 each. And I actually send 5 of them out to students who have done really well. And students now post it online on LinkedIn and Twitter. I got my magnet. And people actually now try to think about how can they make a very insightful comment just to get a magnet, and they do it. So anyway, so some parting words. I have to bring this in, I have to pull everything together. Show empathy. Make sure students feel seen, heard, and valued. The online space, as that participant said, takes away humanity. It makes them feel like they're just a screen. How are we going to change that? How are we going to change that? And I've been admiring Althea's smile throughout. This wonderful Althea. Thank you. Thank you for being there. Embrace change. Don't be a dinosaur. right? I remember initially when we started, that's when we first talked about people's resistance to change. We have to change, especially us engaged at the University of the West Indies. Then finally, two more things. You have to create a social presence. How are you making yourself real to students? What are you doing? Are you going to do weekly updates? Are you going to have a nice intro video where they see you? Do you do with the weekly updates? Do you take them, show them your favorite books, show them what your library looks like? What do you have? Share something personal about yourself. Finally, what is your brand? What is that one thing? We have one professor, his name is Larry Brock. He always tells them, people might interpret these stats one way and draw the graph differently, but I have the pen, and this is how I'm drawing the graph. And students now, one student went on Amazon, created a shirt that says, I have the pen, and sold it to other students for $22. I told Larry's making money off of him. He's like, I know, I'm retiring. Then I saw t-shirts that said, go out in the world and be successful. I saw t-shirts on Amazon. I had to copyright the phrase just to stop them from selling. This young woman from Brazil who was a student. Remember, we have 7,000 students. If you sell to 10%, she was selling to about 25% of the students, and you're making $12 each. 7,000 students, do the math. So anyway, what is your brand? What are you known for when students hear your name? What phrase do they think of? What do you do? What do you provide them with that they take away? They know you're a real person. This is you. Mine is, as always, I'll tell you this, I end everything by saying, for each and every one of the participants here, I want you to do one thing today that will enhance your chance of success in whatever you're doing in terms of education and instruction. So I want each and every one of you to go out into the world and be successful. Ciao.